Hello, everyone! As I walk into the camera frame because we don't have anyone to click play for us. And welcome to Completing Cast. Oh my god, it's been a while.
Yes.
I think I did one in all of 2020. But we're here with Brian, and I'm going to pronounce this right. Beversluis. Sluice.
Close enough. Yeah.
And I'm not going to restart because I don't feel like it. Man, at least we'll keep that tradition going on. And this, actually, speaking of tradition, is our 4th annual just NFL podcast on a game store podcast. So we did 2017. I looked this up just before. 2018, 2019. We skipped 2020 for obvious reasons. And here we are in 2021, and I'm not counting last year's as something that we missed. This is the 4th annual.
If I'm not mistaken, I was the one who said we shouldn't do it, so it's
not
your fault.
And honestly, I did a podcast or two even before COVID via Skype, and it was I remember probably 60% of the time was my friend going, "What's that?"
Yeah, it's...
Unless you have a really boss setup, but otherwise it's no bueno.
Yeah.
So we're here. We are socially distanced. He wouldn't sit within 6 feet of me if even without COVID. Honestly,
yeah.
I think that's one thing that didn't change. I find myself going through my normal daily life, obviously being safe and whatever, and I'm like, I wouldn't be this close to people anyway.
Yeah, I don't like.
I'm not at a grocery store and I'm like, hey, I'm distanced from them anyway. So.
If anything, it's a good thing because the people who normally stand uncomfortably close to you don't do that anymore.
Do you remember that episode of Seinfeld with the close talker?
Yeah.
How do you think he's feeling right now? Not so good.
No, not great.
So, as a quick heads up, I'm sure you saw, I have the game room a little blinged out in some NFL stuff. I just want to point that out real quick. It took me all of 5 minutes. We have James Harrison, Pat's jersey. That's for RJ.
Yep.
We have Tom Brady, still playing football, by the way, is on the cover of a PlayStation 1 video game. NFL, Game Day 2003. And I think he was also on for 2004, maybe 2002. But that guy's still playing. Find me someone who was on a PS2 game who's still playing. Now that Drew Brees isn't,
Aside from maybe Adam Vinatieri, that's about it.
Yeah. And I think all the other cover athletes are done. We have Tom Brady Pop. We have a Vince Wilfork. That's probably my most worn jersey from Super Bowl 49. And a Gronkowski jersey that my friend George got me down at Green Dragon. So it being a farmer's market, it is 100% authentic.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Just like all these jerseys. Oh, and this is my Danny Amendola jersey. R.I.P. to Danny Amendola on the Pats. It's been 4 years and I'm still not over it. I don't actually... The one jersey I couldn't find, and this is a prevailing thing with me and Brian, whenever we do something, I can't find my Pats Cam Newton jersey, which he's wearing. That was the first and only jersey I paid full price from NFL.com for. Every other jersey is AliExpress, what have you.
I'm not going to lie, I think that's probably the same for me, too. Because back in the day when I got my Jonathan Stewart, my D'Angelo Williams, my Steve Smith, the legit stitched ones anyway, I got them from some guy who, had them in a bag. And they apparently were licensed NFL stuff, but I didn't pay full price for them. Or this, I was as soon as they signed them, I was like, all right, Spencer and I are getting these.
I will say, that is my most comfortable jersey when I can find it. But unfortunately, having a wife and 2 kids, I was lucky to find these. I can't even find my blue Tom Brady jersey, and that's the one I wore every Sunday for years and years.
Oh my goodness.
So, speaking of Tom Brady, why don't we start with the recap of the 2020 season? Brian, did anything interesting happen in 2020? In general, or in the NFL?
Let's see. Well, they had to deal with their COVID protocols. That was weird.
That was weird, wasn't it? Can we say, just going on that for a second, do you feel like any games were won or lost because of COVID protocol? And actually, as I'm saying that, I can. And it involved the Pats.
Yeah.
That was probably the one that affected the actual NFL game the most. Because Cam was lighting it up for the first 4 or 5 weeks. Then he got COVID. And obviously he should have been out. We're not saying otherwise.
Yeah.
But he was out for the Chiefs game. The game was very close until the 4th quarter, when all the Pats backups were just throwing pick sixes, But I think even going into halftime, it was 7-3 or something like that. And you feel like Cam would have made the difference. And then after Cam came back, he wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a matter of the not having the practice time at that point, but you got to think a lot of it's COVID related because he was pretty good the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, I mean they ran him into the ground, but he was good enough. I mean, he was definitely winning them games with a roster, at least offensively, that wasn't good. Like it just wasn't.
I'm not used to seeing a Pats team having like juggernauts besides Gronk. You know, everyone else is your Amendolas of the world. But that team, the 2020 Pats team on offense, name the tight end. Name the number one tight end.
It's funny because I know who it is too, but I can't think.
But right, it's not big enough for you to be like,
Yeah.
I mean, can you name a wide receiver besides Edelman that was on that team?
Damiere Byrd.
Yeah.
N'Keal Harry.
Okay, there we go. Can your average fan name someone besides Edelman?
No. The only reason I know of Damiere Byrd is because he played for the Panthers for a number of years. Yeah.
So he had that Panthers-Pats connection. But yeah, that and Michelle was out most of the season. It was rough.
It was bad.
It was rough.
Yeah, it was
so,
bad.
But anyway, there were some bad things in 2020. I think the Pats went 7-9, but there were some good things. Somebody moved teams and something happened, but I kind of forget. Can you remind me what happened with that then? That's the double drink, by the way.
Was LaShawn McCoy to the Chiefs this year? I don't remember.
No, LaShawn McCoy won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs last year. Then he moved to the Bucs this year and won a Super Bowl without playing, I think, any snaps in either playoff.
That's what I was thinking.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Is pretty cool.
But yeah, Tom, we won't go on this too long. But Tom went to the Bucs, and I will say that was a really fun team to watch.
Oh yeah, well they built a juggernaut overnight.
It's crazy,
like,
right?
I mean, they already had the good pieces on offense, like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They had some good pieces on defense, like Shaq Barrett was good the year before that. Levante David was probably in the top 3 conversation when Luke Kuechly was in the league as far as linebackers go. But they weren't a complete team at all in 2019. So
no, I think they went like 7-9 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Jameis Winston throwing 30 interceptions didn't help, but yeah, then this offseason happened. They get Tom, they get Gronk, they get Leonard Fournette, they get Antonio Brown. They re-signed an offensive lineman. They may have signed another one. They signed Ndamukong Suh.
Well, they drafted that offensive, the left tackle, who was like amazing.
Yeah,
I forget his. I haven't been following quite as close as some of the more offensive lineman kind of players. I might not remember the names of.
Yeah.
That brings up 2 points that I want to run by you. The first is pretty obvious. I think it goes to show you that we already knew this before, but quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. Right?
Yeah.
Like for a team sport, obviously. Single golfer is a little bit different.
I think that it is the most important position in all of sports, but you also need a coach that will put them in position to succeed. Like, I think if, who was the coach for the Buccaneers before?
Dick Cotter?
Dirk Cotter.
Dirk Cotter.
I don't think they would have won the Super Bowl if Dirk Cotter was their head coach.
I could see that.
Because he wasn't good.
Yeah.
He was bad.
Yeah.
Like at least Bruce Arians made Jameis Winston threw for 5,000 yards in his system.
It was like 30 touchdowns, 30 picks, or something like that.
Yeah, so it wasn't the best, but it was something where you could look at it and be like, yeah, Jameis Winston's a pretty good quarterback. Where then Brady comes in, he figures out the system right away, and Bruce Arians made Carson Palmer relevant again.
True.
So it's like, I think that quarterback is the most important position, but there's that caveat that you need a decent head coach as well, or at least a good offensive coordinator.
There were times, because I did watch every Bucs game, there were times early on, and keep in mind there was no training camp last year, where you could tell that they weren't quite synced up, but then when it really mattered, they finally hit that. It seemed like early on, Brady and Arians were more like no risk it, no biscuit all the time. Like it seemed like much more of just like run it on first, get a yard, run it on second, get a yard, heave it deep for third down kind of thing. And obviously throughout the playoffs and all that, they switched to more of a balanced offense. But there were times where you could tell they were kind of figuring themselves out. Obviously not having a training camp does not help that.
Yeah, I actually think it kind of played into their favor a little bit because every team was doing that.
Yep.
So, like, Brady, who is Brady, like, he probably learned the system in 2 months before the season even started. But, every team was doing that, and eventually it all clicked together at the right time for him.
Do you think if let me ask you this. How long would it take you to completely learn a system as a quarterback? Even if you were like a third stringer that would never play. If they were like, here's the playbook, boy. And you...
Probably one full season.
Yeah. I just want... When they call plays, I'm just like, I'm blown away.
Yeah.
You know? Just on blah, 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 on to it. It's like, okay. And people make fun of some of these wide receivers for being, you know... knuckleheads, but they certainly know what's going on when that's being said.
Well, the thing about the reps in practice is that you can do so many of them, but until you've actually seen it in a game situation where you're adjusting on the fly, you can't know everything. It's like, because the NFL is such a sport where it's like, okay, this might be a slant route, this might be a post route, but in a given game against a given defense, that the depth of that play could be, for a slant, could be anywhere from 3 to 7 yards. For a post, it could be anywhere from 15 to 25 yards. So it's like, that's all very game dependent, and I think that's something that's lost out there. I mean, Cam Newton is probably one of the smartest quarterbacks I've seen. At least I've observed learn the game and whatnot. Like he got to a point where he literally called the plays in 2015 for the most part. Not quite like Peyton, but like he'd get like a few calls and he'd make the call.
Well, he was much younger than Peyton was when doing that anyway.
Yeah,
so.
And in Cam's first year, his center was calling the protections every time. It's like, because he was brand new to the NFL. So it's like, I think you need that in-game experience, and especially when you're in a new system with people you don't know, because every player is different. So, yeah, I mean, it's impressive that Brady came in and was that good right away.
I was watching some YouTube video, I think it might have been by the NFL themselves, maybe NFL Throwback, and they were talking about the greatest free agent signings of all time, and they already had Brady at 3 or 4, which I didn't even think about, but I mean, it makes sense if literally it is a signing that brings you minimum 1 Super Bowl, you know, even if they don't make the playoffs again. That's better than most. I think number 1 was Drew Brees, because we forget, he was a free agent signing. He stayed there for 15 years, you know, won a Super Bowl. Yeah, didn't get to another one. No, but made heavy playoff runs.
Yeah, I mean, he was good with the Chargers, but like when he went to the Saints, once they got him with Sean Payton, it was just automatic.
I feel a lot of people forget, and I sometimes myself forget, that he played on the Chargers and was a signing. People probably just assume when you're there so long that he was drafted.
Yep.
I think number 2 was Peyton, and then I think number 3 was Brady. Brady might have been 4 with Reggie White being number 3. I'm not sure. He's up there too. But it's crazy to think that after 1 year, you can be like, wow, it's one of the top 10 free agent signings.
Yeah, and based on the way the Buccaneers are going, since they reassembled their Super Bowl roster for the most part, if they win another Super Bowl, he jumps over Peyton very quickly.
Oh yeah, especially when you know that in 2015, I don't think anyone, and unfortunately we both had to watch the Broncos and Panthers game, awful game.
Yeah.
No one is giving that to Peyton for the reason they're winning. I mean, not even close. You know, maybe the Brock Osweiler would have given them maybe a better, I don't know, maybe equal chance. But obviously in 2013 when they got there and got killed by the Seahawks, which was a great game by the way.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, he was much more up the forefront there.
Right.
So speaking of that, going to retired players, because we already talked about the fact that the Buccaneers did win the Super Bowl. As a reminder to everyone watching, they did. And Tom Brady has 5? 6?
I've lost count.
I think this many rings.
Yeah, 7.
So.
Yeah.
By the way, I remember being in my first year in college, which was 2007. I remember having many arguments with people on my floor. I only stayed in dorms for 1 year because you had to at Drexel, and although I enjoyed it, I remember having tons and tons of arguments of Brady versus Manning, because you got to remember in 2007, this was before they went 16-0. This is right after Peyton won his first Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and just I obviously even at the time was a staunch Bradyite. And it's just funny to think back, however long that was, 15 years ago or whatever, there was still this, it was 50-50. It wasn't like me versus everyone or everyone versus me. It was 50-50. But now it's it's pretty much to bed, any sort of...
Manning may have outperformed Brady on a more consistent basis, stat-wise, but I mean, it wasn't even that. It wasn't enough to put him that far ahead of him.
I mean, if someone's going to make that argument, I'm going to say Drew Brees.
Yeah,
like remember when Brees broke the all-time yards mark, and they like stopped the game in mid game. It was like a Monday Night Football game, and it was just like very cringy. I feel.
Weren't they losing that game?
I feel like they were winning, actually.
Oh.
I feel like it was a game where it was, like, already over. It was against, like, the Redskins or something like that, the football team. And I feel like it was already over, and it was like, just cut off it.
I think he set the first time he set that record, because that's not the first time he set that record.
Right.
I believe the first time he set that record was against the Panthers, and I remember watching it because the very last play of the game was where he got to. It was either that record or just getting to a certain milestone, maybe 5,000 yards passing. But they were down by like 2 touchdowns when it happened, and I was like,
I guess. I mean, you got to have a little bit of it, but yeah. So speaking of that, I do have another question that I want to pose to you and to the audience. And audience, please feel free to respond below with an emphatic no with a bunch of exclamation points. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer if he never plays another snap?
I don't think he should be, but I think he will be.
Okay. Based on
playoffs, pretty much exclusively.
Do you think it's based on the fact that he was with Tom and with a big team like the Pats that'll kind of push him in because of the fan base?
It's just he made like the biggest plays of his career always came in the postseason. But when you look at him, the way I've always graded Hall of Fame players is like, okay, how do they stack up to their competition? And I can't say that Edelman was even in the top 10 of his position at any point in his career.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah. I wouldn't even go as far to say that. I agree. Yeah. I agree. I mean, you and me could always every year name 10 wide receivers we take over.
And like that's the thing is like Steve is like he's going to get in before Steve Smith, and Steve Smith is the first person since like 1995 to get the Triple Crown in receiving.
Steve Smith isn't in?
No.
Has he been eligible yet?
He probably is next year, but I don't think he's gonna. He's not going to be a first ballot guy. He's going to be waiting because he doesn't have the Super Bowl rings. He only has the 1 year in the play. Well, he has 2 technically, but he has 2013, but he was still a rookie, and he has 2015 where he
2003.
2003 and 2005. He had 2003 where he was still a rookie and he was kind of like second fiddle to Muhsin Muhammad. 2005 he blew apart everyone, like up until Larry Fitzgerald. In the playoffs, like Steve Smith was easily the best postseason performance by a wide receiver ever, but he's not going to get in because he didn't win a Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I always get surprised by the NFL Hall of Fame because compared to like other Hall of Fames, I always feel like it's more even a higher echelon to get in, you know? And maybe that's because there's so many players on every NFL team. Yeah. I've had this conversation in group chats where Brian was there before with our friends like Mush that know NBA, and I'll be like, is this guy Hall of Fame? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, no question. And I'm like, really? Like, I just think he's like, when I think Hall of Fame, I think like Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, you know, but I'll be like, is, I don't know, Ben Wallace Hall of Fame? Oh, no question. And it's like, what? And don't take that one for the exact one, but I remember asking many players and being like, are you sure? You know? So I feel like the NFL's one is much a higher pedestal, but I will say, if you wanted to include a lot of the regular season stuff, I can find you a bunch of schlubs that will play against the Bengals twice a year and get 150 yards in every game. That's one of the things that if you don't really look at a season stats and see, like, say a receiver has 1,000 yards, but they might be like 20, 30, 40, 200 against the Falcons or something like that. Does it still count? Yes, but is it as important week 17 when you're 2-13? I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I mean, context is important as far as the Hall of Fame conversation goes. It's just, when I look at a position, like, I want to see a guy who was at the top of his peers, and I just don't think Edelman ever was that, aside from those times in the playoffs where he made the plays that needed to be made. That, like, there's no disputing that he did it. So
there's got to be in other sports or even in football other players that are analogous to him where it's just like, it's almost like Tom Brady, actually, you know? I mean, if you were like making the perfect quarterback specimen, and if you couldn't have Trevor Lawrence, you'd probably say like Ryan Leaf, right? Like, he was like the perfect specimen, you know? And you would never pick Tom. You wouldn't Tom Brady. You wouldn't be like, I want to be very slow. Like he has the 6'4" going for him, but besides that, you wouldn't be like right. Yeah. You wouldn't want to be like I want him to have moderate arm strength. Right. Yeah. You would never say that. So it is a very interesting conversation. I obviously think he should be in because of all he did in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. But I'm actually very surprised Hines Ward isn't in because people's general thing is if Hines Ward isn't in, Edelman shouldn't be in. I thought Hines Ward was in.
Yeah, I would think he should have been in already as well. But receiver is such a weird position because like T.O. took forever to get into the Hall of Fame too, and he's easily one of the best receivers to ever play the game.
Is Chad Johnson in?
I don't think so.
See, like I feel like he's at the level where. But
I think there's probably like a backlog of receivers who deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
That's true. I mean, even like 10, 15 years from now, people will be saying like, is OBJ a Hall of Famer? That kind of thing, where they'll remember the catch, but his years with the Browns. Okay, so we're going to shift gears to let's talk a little bit about some off-season stuff, if that's good with you guys out in YouTube land. I don't want to start into the draft quite yet. I want to ask Brian a simple question that no one can answer, especially with this year's just general off-season. Brian, what is a salary cap?
It's
because I think we all don't really know.
I mean, it's just what the what each team has allocated to player salaries. But the thing about the salary cap that's very weird is that there are things in there where you can kind of stretch it out. Like a signing bonus is something that a lot of teams use to stretch out salary cap. Like theoretically, you pay a guy $30 million a year, but for the first 2 years of his contract, he might only be making 15 to 16 on the salary cap because a signing bonus is stretched out over. Let's say that's a 5-year contract. Stretched out, they give him $100 million up front, so he gets that money. He physically has that money in his pocket. The NFL, the way they budget it is that he will owe $20 million every year, or the club will owe him $20 million every year for the 5 years of that contract. And then, if they cut him at year 3, then the budget goes to now they owe him he counts for $50 million against the books because he's no longer there. So they can't stretch that money out.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the question that needs to be added to that is why is it so? Why do they allow it to be so confusing?
Well, the part of it is that the NFL is a kind of a unique sport in that it's so there's so much risk involved with signing a player. Like in the NBA, people get hurt. Not usually career-threatening. You don't see players just all of a sudden retire all that often. Baseball, they'll play 7,000 games a year. And, they might be out for a couple weeks or something like that. I don't understand. I've never really looked into the salary implications of hockey, but I imagine it's.
I don't know much about hockey at all.
All I know is that the good hockey players make a freak ton of money. So, but in the NFL, like the salary cap is like a number that they can assign to people to help dictate a market, but the number you always really want to look at is what money is guaranteed, because that's really what they're getting paid. Like
absolutely, I think especially this year, and just going off what I saw for people commenting online and all that, no one really understands it except for I guess the people who are in the front office. When you see teams like for years and years. The Saints were in cap hell, but then they would sign Michael Thomas to a huge extension, and then they would sign Alvin Kamara to a huge extension. And my thought would be, what is cap hell if you can be like, Michael Thomas, maybe he might have been the most expensive wide receiver at the time, or definitely up there when they signed him. And it's just, it's very confusing. And I know it's like pushing it down the road, it's pushing the cap down the road. I don't know if I'm asking for it to be for them not to be able to do that anymore, because I understand the cap is a very important thing, unlike the other sports where it really doesn't seem to matter quite as much.
Right.
But it makes it hard to understand as a fan where your team is. If that makes sense. So like the Bucks had very little cap heading into this year, but they re-signed everyone. And it's just okay,
Yeah, well, so to give you a good understanding of what happened with the Saints. So they continued to push guaranteed money down the road, further and further down the road. At one point, they were going to owe Drew Brees $60 million in 2021. The thing about the teams with that strategy is they're kind of banking on inflation happening with the salary cap, where they're expecting there to be more money available that year. So what the Saints kept doing is they'd restructure contracts, push more and more money down the road. The cap hit would be smaller in that year, but they'd also owe that guy for sure that money. Where like a guy on the 4th or 5th year of his contract has very little guaranteed money, so the team could be like, "See ya," and they owe him nothing. Where like, okay, well we're going to restructure your contract and knock your cap hit down this year, so we'll push some of that off to next year. Okay, so his cap hits $40 million next year. However, he's got $25 million in dead cap. So now if they do let go of him, they still got to eat a lot of that. So it's a very, there's a lot of moving parts to it. It's something where unless you do the research, you're never going to really understand it. But the Saints ran into where the NFL hit a season where they didn't just, it wasn't just that there wasn't inflation, it went down. Right, the total salary.
First
cap.
time in 15 years or something.
Yeah, and so that's where they really paid, because they had to get rid of a lot of people, and they had to restructure a few people. They're still paying Drew Brees like $25 million this year to not play for them, I want to say. Yeah, it's they did this to themselves, and a lot of teams are doing that, and it's probably going to happen to the Bucs too. But by the time that it's relevant, Brady will be gone, David will be gone, Sue will be gone, Mike Evans might still be there, Chris Godwin might still be there, but all these guys that they re-signed are going to be gone anyway, so it'll just be they need to rebuild their roster now.
I feel like that becomes almost a philosophical question, where it's like, would you rather be, say, the Saints or the Eagles?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the Saints, almost there for years and years and years and years and years, but never quite got there. And then they had to get blown up. And then the Eagles, in 2017, won it all, but then had to get blown up like 2-3 years later because of what they were doing.
The sad part is they didn't. The only part of the reason they had to blow up because right after that they gave Carson Wentz a giant contract.
True.
Yeah.
True. The guy who did not win the Super Bowl.
No, he did not. He has a ring, but he did not win that Super Bowl. Yeah.
I don't know, and obviously I'm not a longtime Bucs fan, but would a longtime Bucs fan, if you were like, hey, you're going to win the Super Bowl, deep playoff run the next 2 years, maybe an appearance in the Super Bowl, maybe not, but then the team's going to get blown up, or would you rather have Jameis Winston 7-9 for a long time? I'm pretty sure they'd pick the former.
They're going to pick the former, and it's just one of those things where. Part of it is that you just have to be in a situation where you can do that. Like the Bucs stumbled upon a very good situation because they had Tom Brady, and they can just go to a free agent and be like, "We have Tom Brady. Are you willing to take a little less to go play with him in the Super Bowl?"
Yep.
Not a lot of teams can do that. I mean, like the Saints were trying to do that for a long time, and it's like, okay, but Brees has only ever won one Super Bowl. A good example is the 2019 Panthers. They built what looked to be on paper a very competitive roster, but Cam ended up getting hurt and everything fell apart. It's like that's all it takes for there are a lot of teams that try to make themselves into instant playoff contenders right away, but there's so much that can go wrong with that.
The season's only 17 games long now, but sometimes it feels so short and sometimes it feels so long.
Yeah.
Like if you're watching a bad team and it's week 10,
by week 10 I was like falling asleep during the games for the Panthers this past year.
Pats games as well for me this year. It was like, God, I would just look at who they were playing and I was like, if it wasn't the Jets, I was like, well, it's going to be like 21-10, so... Yeah, I definitely feel the fans there. My question is, because you mentioned about how Tom Brady going there is almost kind of like a cheat code where you're like, hey, come here and win. Once Brady retires, is there going to be another situation like that? And is there a player you could see kind of stepping up to the plate as far as being like, listen, I'm okay, I made enough money, I'm good. Obviously, they have to be good as well. Let's do this. Let's make a team. Because the first one that comes to mind for someone who's in their mid to late 30s is Aaron Rodgers, but he's never shown that he wanted to take less than the absolute max he can get. And by the way, we're both quite the capitalists in here. We're completely fine with that. I'm totally fine with someone doing that. Brady, of course, is able to do that because A, he's played a billion years, B, his wife is Giselle.
bank, yeah.
Probably more than Brady, all things considered.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's another situation that's going to come up with that, with anyone that we know now in the NFL?
Russell Wilson.
I could, now that you say that, I could definitely see that, because he wants so badly to be the Brady, Michael Jordan kind of thing. I believe his agent when he says that Russell considers himself a top 5 quarterback of all time already. I believe him.
Yeah.
That he believes that. Whether it's true or not, that's up to debate. Obviously, he's amazing, but I believe that he honestly believes that.
Well, another thing too with Wilson is that it just came out recently what actually happened as far as Brady and Belichick went in New England in 2017, I want to say, where it got pretty ugly with them. Basically, Belichick apparently was like, I'm called up the Dolphins, the Washington football team, and might have been the Bills about coaching vacancies after they wouldn't let go of Jimmy Garoppolo. They were stuck. They wanted to stick with Brady.
Belichick on the Bills, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if it was them or not, but it was a team with a head coaching vacancy. And then a few years later, Brady ends up leaving anyway, even after they get rid of Garoppolo, and it's like that kind of the Wilson situation right now, where Pete Carroll and him, they've been having their disagreements. There was this whole spectacle over the off season where people weren't sure. Like the Bears offered 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson and more. I think that Wilson's going to find his way out of there, especially if they continue to not give him an offensive line. Yeah,
I've never seen a player. I think that Russell Wilson probably does more with less than anyone.
Yeah,
even Brady. Like sometimes with the receivers that he has there, and just he has that most beautiful lollipop throw.
Yep,
it's unbelievable. It's like on the same level as Mahomes when he's doing his like sideway throws. It's that good to me. It's just beautiful, and I could definitely see that. It just seems like they have the guy, and it just seems like they're not doing it. Or maybe they're making the wrong moves. Maybe they're trying in earnest and messing up.
They've gotten good receivers for him. I mean, they got Tyler Lockett, they got DK Metcalf. They've continued to field at least competent defense, and most of the time it's been good. But yeah, his offensive line has been horrible for almost his entire career.
He also probably wants out of the NFC West, which is a really good division.
Yeah.
I mean, for years you could say, oh, the Niners are bad. Not anymore. You could say the Cardinals are bad. Not really anymore, you know. So, as we've seen with the Pats for years, sometimes just making the playoffs and getting that first round bye is like 80% of the battle.
Yeah.
And not having to be in a competitive NFC West, try your hardest the whole 17 weeks, 18 weeks now. And then kind of sputter out at the end, unfortunately.
Right.
So, yeah, I could definitely say that with Russell Wilson, and he is amazing. Which, you mentioned the 3 first-round picks for Wilson from the Bears, but I don't know if that was ever just rumored or what.
No, it was confirmed.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. And people were saying, "Oh, that's too much. That's too much." What did the Niners just moved up a couple places in the draft, and they gave up like 2 first-round picks and like another pick.
Yeah,
right?
They gave up a lot of draft.
So
picks.
like that's just one of those things you have to like take into consideration. Like 3 first-round picks, obviously over the course of 3 years, for someone who you're like, this dude is like 30, 31 years old. He's super good. He's good, and you're giving up just about the same to move up a couple spots to take a guy who might be good.
Right?
Isn't that what you? I mean, obviously salary cap notwithstanding, isn't that what you want? To have someone at quarterback who is good.
Yeah.
And as let's segue into the draft for that. Actually, I understand drafting is very important, but I would always, if I could, look to free agency for quarterback if at all possible, because I feel unless you have like a top 5 pick, it can really pick the guy. It's such a crapshoot in the NFL. Russell Wilson was a 4th-round pick. Brady was a 6th-round pick. Everyone passed on Russell Wilson 3-4 times. Minimum.
Yeah, it's hard because like for every Russell Wilson, there's 10 other guys who don't ever do anything. It's like, and same with Brady. I mean, like he was picked right around the same place that the Panthers picked a guy named Tony Pike out of Cincinnati. The guy never threw a football in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, you look at the draft where the Bears traded up to take Mitch Trubisky. Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes were selected later in the first round, and both of them, well, Deshaun Watson's career might be over, but those two were considered two of the top quarterbacks in the league.
Off-field stuff notwithstanding,
right.
Deshaun is an amazing NFL player.
Yes.
So, 100% agree. And you can't ever. I mean, that's just, it's like the Pats picking Aaron Hernandez. I mean, actually, no, it's not even the same because Deshaun never had any warning signs. No, Aaron Hernandez did have warning signs.
That's why he got taken.
That's why he got taken later. But like Deshaun didn't, But anyway, that's another story for another time. But that's the kind of stuff you can't help or.
Yeah, you're taking a shot in the draft, and ultimately it's how much do you trust your front office to find the guy that you want? Because the Rams traded up for Jared Goff. I think they did trade up for him at one point.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
It was either that or I know the Eagles traded up for Carson Wentz, but and Washington traded up for RG3, and it's like.
Yeah. Well, the RG3 one at the time was an amazing.
It was a very good trade, and it just didn't work out because he walked his way into the wrong system. There's so many variables with NFL quarterbacks, especially these days, because they don't have as much practice time, so that makes the system they're in and the coaches they work with matter so much more. Like, Jameis Winston was a laughingstock until, and he still was, but, he showed, okay, I can put up elite-level quarterback numbers when he was working with Bruce Arians. He needs to work on the turnovers, but you don't throw for 5,000 yards by accident. So it's just one of those things where you have to have the perfect things mold together because I think Justin Herbert's fantastic. He plays for the Chargers.
Was he really, really hyped last year? Because I feel like he kind of came out of nowhere, at least as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't like all you hear about is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence. I never heard about that with Justin Herbert.
He came out of nowhere very quickly. He was your prototypical quarterback where it's he can throw the ball real good. He has a really good arm. He's very accurate. He just needs to work on his fundamentals, which unfortunately with a lot of quarterbacks that come out of the draft, that is what they are. The ones that are coveted are the ones where it's okay, I know he can throw the ball really well in the right situation. How can we make the situation right for him? And he may not work out. I mean, Drew Lock's another one. Drew Lock, in his first couple seasons, people were like, oh, he's the future of the Broncos. Now they're in the conversation to draft a quarterback again because he didn't turn out to be the guy. There's a lot of...
I feel like Drew Lock never really got a chance. The NFL, that's probably the biggest thing that's the difference nowadays is how fast quarterback carousels happen.
Yes.
We're not boomers here when we're talking about, when you drafted someone, for the most part, they sat for a year. They sat for a year, and if not half a year, and then the team sucked, and then you put him in or whatever. Now it's if you're drafted in top 10, boy, you're playing.
Yeah.
And if you guys go 4-12, they're drafting a quarterback again. I don't think I ever saw that in the past. Even again, Ryan Leaf, we mentioned him, and again, there's something about picking someone. What did he go first?
Second.
No, he went after Peyton. Okay, right. But there's something about picking someone there. You give him a little bit more time. I get it, but he was around for a couple years. Jamarcus Russell was around for a couple years. If Jamarcus Russell was picked now, it would be 6 games, you know, and they would be trade for someone, get Ryan Fitzpatrick in here. Ryan Fitzpatrick literally would have played for Jamarcus Russell back then if it was in the same, it's crazy. I always mention, and I don't know anything about the guy personally, but what's the kid I'm thinking about? Who went to the Dolphins? He was on the card. Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, I feel, and I know nothing about him, but just looking at it, he was put into a Cardinals team that had Steve Wilkes as the head coach.
He was
right? Yeah. I remember talking to our friend Nathan about it, and he was like, "I hate this team. I hate it."
Yes.
Then going to the Dolphins and getting virtually no chance, and now he's out of the league.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think he's a backup somewhere right now.
He didn't even make it as backup for the Bucks.
I think he's a backup for the Niners maybe now.
You might be right there.
I'm not sure, but yeah, he didn't really get a fair shake with it either, but he was one. The Cardinals situation sucked because Steve Wilkes came from Carolina and he was promoted as what people thought was a young defensive coordinator. So all of a sudden, a year after he became that, the Cardinals made him a head coach, and it's just like, come on, like you really expect him to be successful at that point? Like, not everybody's Sean McVay. Like,
do you remember who was ahead of Josh Rosen on the Cardinals QB chart? You remember who started that season and then unceremoniously retired after he got hurt again?
I know who it is too.
Sammy B, baby.
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford.
Right.
I remember I was in Detroit watching the Pats get whooped by the Lions on Sunday Night Football when Rosen came in for Bradford when he got hurt like week 3 or something like that, and then just never played again. He retired with his $200 million and was like, peace.
Yep, I'm done.
You ever think about what Sam Bradford's doing nowadays? Probably nothing.
Yeah.
Probably nothing, right?
Probably living the life. I mean, he made so much money in the NFL, and all he did was get hurt all the time. So
didn't he set the record for the highest completion percentage in a season
with the Minnesota Vikings. I want to say, which is, I mean, they got Kirk Cousins, who's basically the same quarterback. So yeah, that's what
somehow cheaper.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Somehow, 3 years, $84 million for Kirk Cousins is like kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Nowadays, right? It's crazy.
It is, yeah. I mean, it was mostly his contract was almost fully guaranteed, but I mean, he's won a couple playoff games for him, so I
mean, that's about what it gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the draft coming up, let me ask you 2 questions. First about quarterbacks. Probably taking Lawrence out of it because I'm guessing Lawrence is your guy.
Lawrence is almost locked in as number 1. Like I would say 99.95% locked in.
So if you had picked number 1, you would take Lawrence.
Yeah.
If you would pick number 2, you would take.
Seems like it's going to be Zack Wilson.
No. You would take.
I would take. It's a toss-up between him and Justin Fields for me.
Okay. Zack Wilson's the BYU guy, right?
The BYU guy, yeah. Like, the thing about Zack Wilson is just that he's one of those quarterbacks where he came from a team where they never really played good, like Justin Fields played for Ohio State, so he's facing NFL-level talent a lot of games, where Zack Wilson was not.
Is Zack Wilson another Carson Wentz in the making?
He could be. I
mean, Carson Wentz went to what? North Dakota State.
North Dakota State.
Okay.
Which give credit to North Dakota State. They're a team that typically comes in and beats the crap out of a Division I team.
Okay.
Even though they're Division II, but like that's my only concern with him is with Justin Wilson or with Justin Wilson. Yeah. No, Josh Wilson. Wait.
Zack Wilson, yeah. Justin Fields.
Zack Wilson. That's my only concern with Zack Wilson is what's he going to look like at the next level. Like, it sucks because he's going to go to the Jets and they're going to make him play. And he'll probably get the crap kicked out of him his first year. But, like, he's one where it's like, yeah, you could draft him 2nd overall, but if you happen to have a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick stashed away in your locker, I'd be like, let's play Brian Fitzpatrick for.
I don't get it. Like, I understand Jets fans being miserable, for a variety of reasons.
For many decades.
Many reasons. But, like, why can't you just, like, I understand being excited too, but, like, they're gonna draft this guy and throw him out week 1.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. And if they don't draft him and they draft Justin Fields, then he's gonna be out there week 1 behind. Do they have a good O-line anymore?
They've made some moves this offseason, but they still have a very, very bad roster.
Who's their number 1? Robbie Anderson?
Robbie Anderson's with Carolina now. I believe their number 1 wide receiver is Corey Davis, and he played for the Titans last year.
Yeah, and he was great on the Titans. He was a real standout.
He was all right.
He was okay. Yeah. He was okay. So, like, and then he's going to play a year. They're going to go 3-14. Oh, it's so weird to say that. And then they'll be like, oh, we need to trade for Teddy Bridgewater or whatever. You should have had Teddy Bridgewater start the damn season anyway, Or Ryan Fitzpatrick. There are so many guys you can get that are like that. Like, who cares? Get that guy from the 49ers. Get Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
Just start him for, like, a month. 8 games, whatever. Like, what are you going to win this? Are the Jets going to win the Super Bowl next year? Are the Jags going to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
No, give them.
The sad part is the Jets had Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
Yeah, and they could have very easily. They ended up playing Sam Darnold instead of him, which I can't fault them for. But then Sam Darnold wasn't successful because they couldn't field a competitive NFL roster, and it's like
Sam Darnold's another one. As much as I dislike the Jets, I'm just like, was he given a fair chance? Put on this, like, I don't know, put any quarterback on a team that bad, and they're gonna be bad.
Yeah, I mean, his best receiver that he played with in his entire time there was Robbie Anderson, and last year Robbie Anderson left and went to Carolina.
Yeah.
And their best receiver was Jamison Crowder.
I think so.
Who is a slot wide receiver. It's a horrible situation. I hope that they've managed to knock the draft out of the park so that way maybe Zack Wilson can have some chance of not getting killed, but we'll see.
I like that, speaking of quarterbacks getting killed, the Bengals, did you see the picture the Bengals came out with their new uniforms?
Yes.
So they have these new uniforms, and they have all their current big players, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, there. So there's one throne on the very top, and Joe Mixon's sitting there, which is weird because it's like Joe Burrow just had ACL surgery, so sit your quarterback right there. And then there was this meme going around. I think they have the fifth pick, the Bengals, and some Bengals fans are like, get this wide receiver, and and the meme's like Joe Burrow when they're talking about knocking an O lineman, he's sitting there in shorts, and you see his ACL scar. It's this long, and it's like, please.
I get why it makes sense to get him to get the best wide receiver in the draft right now is Jamar Chase, and that was the guy he threw to last year when he was or the year before last year when he was in college.
Right.
So it makes sense to get him, but at the same time, he was getting beat up last year. They really should get an offensive lineman.
Do you think the quarterbacks for some of these bad teams just stand there in the tunnel beforehand instead of getting hyped, just go
I don't think they do that until year 3 or 4 when they figured out okay, these guys are bad.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these quarterbacks that are drafted high, they usually have high character. They're usually they're supposed to be leaders, so they usually, I imagine, they go out there and they're just trying to motivate their guys to play well and protect for them as they get the shit kicked out of them during the game. So it's yeah.
One last quarterback thing before we move on. Oh my God, I forget the guy's name already. The person who started the quarterback for the Washington football team, Dwayne Haskins. When you hear about a player, especially a quarterback, and they talk about even coming out of college that they don't have the highest of what do you want to say, work ethic, does that worry you as a fan of that team?
Absolutely.
I mean, it does, right?
Yes.
You don't have to be Tom Brady and be there at 4 a.m. every day.
No.
There's a lot of Tom Brady stories of that, but you gotta put the time in, right? He was partying he signed a third contract, and he was on a rookie deal. You know,
the NFL is such a different animal than a lot of college quarterbacks. Johnny Manziel is probably the best example of this, where they were winning in college because they had a really nice arm. They were very athletically gifted. They were just the best player on the field. When you get to the NFL, you can be a top 5 or 10 quarterback, and you could still be the third best athlete on the field at best. Yeah.
There's less of a chance of you facing a Cam Chancellor on the other side, kind of thing. Who is the best athlete, just off the top of your head, in the NFL right now? Just someone, DK Metcalf? Someone that blows the lid off the water.
Metcalf definitely is up there. I think that for a wide receiver, he's definitely up there. For overall athletes, let's see here. That's a tough one.
Because Brian's right. When you're... A lot of these... I guess that's the mindset that's so hard for me to personally understand. These guys were always the best at what they did. Yeah. Always. Midget football, forget about it. They probably are on those teams that score 300 points, right? Yeah. High school, maybe never lost a game. College, maybe never lost a game because of them or whatever, right? Just the best player on the field. And then you go to the cream of the crop where you might not even be top half in terms of athleticism, pure athleticism.
Right.
And that's crazy, right? That's the big step. I feel like even high school to college is okay, there's still a lot of guys here that are not going to go pro, but it's that's why, oh man, I'm sure you hate this as well. Whenever the worst team, say it was when the Browns went 0-16, people would go, would the Browns beat the Alabama football team?
Absolutely.
And I'm like, wait, what?
They absolutely wouldn't.
The Browns wouldn't.
Oh no, the Browns.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Because it's like, all right. How many pros did that Alabama team have? Like 6?
Yeah.
How many pros did that Browns team have? 53.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
That's whenever I see that,
backups and they would have won that game. Yeah.
I don't think if you put the Browns against, because and you know, you're still kind of a kid when you're in college or whatever. You don't have that full man muscle, whatever. All the people on the Browns are men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that hypothetically happened, I don't know if Alabama would score a point. Honestly. Like,
Probably
maybe
not.
a field goal, maybe, I don't know. Like,
the problem, like the guys, like the offensive linemen who weren't NFL caliber talent would get the brakes beat off them by anybody on that team.
No one even wants to see that. That's like watching murder on live TV. No one wants to see that.
To answer your question, I would say my pick for the best athlete right now would probably be somewhere between Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney.
Okay.
Because they are just freaks. And maybe Montez Sweat, though he hasn't like translated into like a really good starter, but these defensive linemen who could run 4.3, 4.4 are crazy. Like,
yeah. I mean, the thing that always like blows me away, because obviously you don't walk by NFL players every day, but when you see these guys standing out there in the huddle and you see their arms, and their arms are like, these are tall guys, and their arms like go like way below their freaking knees. These guys' arms, their wingspan are like unbelievable.
I'll never forget the first time I saw Cam Newton live. Like, TV does not do that man justice. He is gigantic.
It's the same thing. When you go to an NBA game and you're just like, oh, God. And then you see, like, Allen Iverson, who's, like, our height.
Yeah.
These, like, absolute, like, giraffes out there. But you're right. It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
Nuts.
It's hard to imagine till you see, because Cam's 6'5", like, 240 or something like that.
Yeah, he's on the light side. When I saw him, he was 6'6", 260. Yeah. He was big. Like, I remember, and I was, like, seated a couple of rows behind the front, so I had a decent gauge on what he actually like would measure up to, and I was like, oh my god, like, it's just nuts.
And then you imagine being like,
I gotta tackle that guy.
Yeah, imagine not even being a linebacker, being like a cornerback as he's like running out. I'd just be like, where's the flag? Can I pull your flag?
Yeah.
One last question as far as drafting quarterbacks is concerned, then we're going to quickly get to your Pats or Bucks, whatever, or Panthers, excuse me, whatever route you want to go there. I've heard rumors that Trevor Lawrence maybe doesn't have that killer drive that like a Brady or someone who just like has always been told that they're not good enough. Would that worry you? Because from what I heard, his family's already pretty well off, so he doesn't have to do well to like buy a house for his family. It seems like he's like, I love football, like kind of like I love football, yeah. You know, but not like, oh, like you don't have to ask some of these players, do you love football? It's their life.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, it's not as big of a red flag to me as the stuff like Dwayne Haskins. It's almost like I like the sport of football. I love playing it. I'd play it. It's a passion of mine, but it's not my entire life. And like, I think compartmentalizing that is actually healthy. Like, I think Andrew Luck's a really good example of that. Like, he played, he got the crap kicked out of him. He loved football. He was you could listen to him play.
Yeah.
He loved it, but as soon as it wasn't right for him, he stepped away, and that was absolutely the right decision. Luke Kuechly ate, slept, and breathed football. And,
that's a good point.
And film, but he wasn't the type of guy where he was going to die on the field for football. That's why he retired. Like, it's one of those things where it's like a slippery slope. It's like, okay, is it that he's not driven to succeed in the NFL, or is it that he's just not? Is it just that the NFL is not his life? Because like, on the one hand, okay, that's a red flag because I don't know if I'm going to take him to a Super Bowl. Or on the other hand, it's like, okay, he understands that his life has different compartments and that football is a career. Like, you know, like I know you're passionate about your work and what you do at your store. Would you take a gun for your store? Like, would you be shot for it?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
in fact, whenever we hire someone, that's like the first thing I say is like, if anyone ever comes in, you open the drawer and you go,
yeah,
please have at it.
I don't know if that analogy is exactly.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, like people can have their careers and work really hard at them and be driven to be successful, but it's not everything in life. And like, I hope that that's what's going on with him, and not that he's the next Jamarcus Russell or Dwayne Haskins, because those poor Jaguars fans, really deserve to have as a franchise quarterback. They haven't had one, I don't think, ever. So
poor mullet guy, I forget his name.
Gardner Minshew.
Poor Gardner Minshew. You know, like he was on a crappy team. He took him to like 8-8 or something like that, or like
he was just better than anyone would have expected because they expected that team to be a dumpster fire, and he won a few games. Yeah. He
like literally won with like a dumpster fire, like you said. So hopefully he gets a chance to go somewhere.
And even if he ends up being the backup to Trevor Lawrence, I mean that could be a lucrative career for him. He could back him up his entire career.
Brian Hoyer, great example.
Yep.
He has at least one Super Bowl ring. Probably, I think I looked it up. It's like $40-50 million he made.
Yeah.
And you don't get hit all the time, dude.
Yeah.
Like, is it exciting? No, but does the paycheck still cash?
Still works.
Certainly does.
Yep.
Okay, so going into draft stuff, and you can choose either your Patriots or the Panthers. Do you have any just general draft thoughts? Who you want to go? Just needs, anything like that?
This draft is going to be really interesting because there's a chance that 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10. Because there's a lot of teams that have been talking about trading up and down. Like the Eagles were actually trying to get that 3rd overall pick before the Niners outbid them. Then they traded back. Then the Dolphins traded up with them. So the Dolphins went from the 3rd pick back to where the Eagles were at, all by moving around. And it's like now the Falcons are in a prime position for a team to trade up and get a quarterback at number 4. If the Lions want to stick with Jared Goff, they're another team. The Panthers have been talking about trading back, so it's like this first round. I feel like the top 10 a lot of years is very peaceful because it's like, okay, the teams that were going to trade up for a quarterback in the top 2 are already there for the most part. And then after that, it's just like this top non-quarterback goes off the board. This top non-quarterback goes off the board. This top non-quarterback goes off the board. Oh, somebody traded up. It's not usually that far, but where this year, like we could see the Patriots jump up and grab a quarterback. We could see the Washington football team jump up and grab a quarterback. Like, it's just going to be a very fun round. I'm pretty excited to watch the Panthers pick at 8 because this is the first year in a while I genuinely have no idea what they're going to do.
What's their biggest need?
It's tough. You could argue that quarterback still is because you don't know what Sam Darnold's an unknown quantity. I think they should at least give him a chance, but I think if Justin Fields falls to them at 8, they're going to take him.
But if there's not one of the top guys, I feel like
I would say offensive line, and right now, based on the way the mock drafts are going, they could take Penei Sewell, who is considered by many accounts the best left tackle in the draft. And then there's this guy, Andrew Slater. He's an offensive lineman. He's that typical high-end talent who can play anywhere on the offensive line, basically, he could play left tackle and be successful. That's where I want. If they trade down, I'd really like them to see them grab a corner. The guy I would like to see them grab is J.C. Horn, the son of Joe Horn.
Oh.
Joe Horn is a corner, or J.C. Horn is a cornerback, and he's apparently your favorite, like, very aggressive, very, like, got a lot of swagger type cornerback where he's, like, constantly going for turnovers. And I just love that about a corner, especially if you have 2 of them. So Carolina has one, but they need another one, so it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
By the way, did either of those offensive tackles play at Iowa? Because I feel like it's always Iowa.
No, I don't think so.
No. Do you could you really see the Pats moving up
absolutely
to do that? See, I for the last 20 years, I can't remember a single time they moved up. But then again, they did have quarterbacks set.
Well, on top,
I guess that's a big thing.
On top of that, this year was really different for the Patriots because they were aggressive in free agency. They weren't pulling like whose teams have you normally done that? Like the Dolphins or like
right.
They weren't.
Dolphins always win the offseason.
Yeah, like they weren't doing the whole like signing the top tier free agents everywhere, but they got guys like Nelson Aguilar. They got him; he was pretty good.
I feel like they even went too far. I feel like sometimes when you're being like too of something, like your wife's like, oh, you're being too annoying, and then you're like, then you flip it and you're like, way docile. Like I feel like they did that where they were like, well, we're just gonna get everyone, and the tight ends they got, that's great, but the Kendrick Bourne, right? And they gave him like a bunch of money. I'm like, Kendrick Bourne, like maybe he'll be great. I don't know, but
he was decent for the 49ers. I think it's just, I think based on their mindset for this offseason, and like on top of that, even after all this money they spent, I'm pretty sure they're still going to have a decent amount of cap next year.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, you can't really bet on Cam because you don't really know where you're going to get from him. Like, when they were doing well with him, he was fine, but he was also running the ball how many times a game? Like, he ran the ball more probably with the Patriots than he ran 7 or 8 of the 9 years he was with Carolina.
He ran a lot.
Yeah, like that's not gonna last. It's just not gonna. It's not something you can count on. Where like, and he's on a 1-year deal. So, but after his COVID situation, he wasn't nearly the same player. Like, he was a player where I watched him throw a few times, and I was like, I don't know if he can throw the ball anymore. And it might have just been his rustiness, but like,
it was bad.
It was really bad. So it's like I could see them getting a quarterback because Cam is the guy where it's like, you bring in his competition, he's gonna treat the guy like a teammate. He's gonna teach him stuff. He's gonna teach him how to be successful. Cam's never been the guy to be like, oh, F off, you know. Like he will teach that guy how to be an NFL quarterback, at least from a mental standpoint. So it's like they go up to 4, they go up to 5, they go up to 6. Grab like Mac Jones. Justin Fields falls far enough. Like,
is there
Trey Lance? Maybe?
Is there a quarterback that's like a Patriot kind of guy? I mean, I don't know if there's a Patriot way anymore now that Tom's not there anymore. But is there a guy that like kind of has that hard nose? I don't know.
I think Kyle Shanahan's offense is kind of similar to the way Belichick runs things, and there's been a lot of people saying Mac Jones is a really good fit for what he does. So if they don't take Mac Jones, if the Niners don't, it's possible they jump up to grab Mac Jones.
Belichick is great friends with Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Mac Jones is Alabama,
yes,
right?
He is.
And there's a lot of players that go to Alabama that, especially on the defensive side of the ball,
right?
Hightower and all that. So that would be pretty interesting. What? Trying to think how to segue with this. Not going straight off the draft, but kind of a free agency still related question. Are the Bucs going to get Antonio Brown? And do they need Antonio Brown? And should they get Antonio Brown?
I think Brown's... I was listening today to the Pat McAfee show, and it sounds like Brown has figured out his whole civil case from a couple years ago, so his market might open a little bit. I think he still wants to go back there and win another Super Bowl. Because at that point, it'd be hard to argue not to put him in the Hall of Fame, because for a very solid span, he was easily the best receiver in the NFL. So, like, I could see them grabbing him, but if they don't, they still have Scotty Miller, and they could even draft a wide receiver. Like, there's a chance that the guy from, I think it's Alabama, but there was a wide receiver, Devontae Smith, I want to say. He measured up to like 166 pounds at the combine, or at his pro day or whatever this week, and it's possible he falls into the mid rounds, and the Patriots could grab him and have their next Antonio Brown, because that guy is fast. Like, he was up there with Jamar Chase as far as like the top 2 receivers in the draft. So like they could grab Devontae Smith, and all of a sudden like their receiver core is set, because now they have a lot of diversification as far as the different skill sets.
I do love Scotty Miller. I do. He's like he'll literally have 2 catches, but they're all like deep bombs, key situations.
Yeah,
he's wonderful. I guess I just look at it like we only get Brady. Maybe a year or 2 more. Give him AB, like AB, please. You know, and you're right about the Hall of Fame stuff, because as we've seen, wide receivers that have issues can sometimes have a harder time getting in. Like Terrell Owens, like, I don't care, you know, what he does off field. If you're just counting on field, he should have been 100% for the Hall of Fame. It's Terrell. Like, he was amazing. Yeah. He's about as slam dunk as you could get, but it took him years because of that. And Antonio Brown is every bit as good for different reasons, of course. Right. I think T.O. probably has 4 inches on Antonio Brown, but doing that would really help. Really help. And there's something about he's one of those guys, like, okay, we're going back to wide receiver stuff real quick. You look at Julio and you go, yes, I see why this gentleman is good as an NFL wide receiver, right? You just look at him and you're like, his legs are like a gazelle, and he's super fast and he's super long. You're like, great. You look at AB and you're just like he's not the fastest, he's not the tallest, he's not the strongest, but it must be the route running.
He worked his butt off to get to where he's at.
Absolutely.
He like, it sucks because like he kind of tarnished a lot of his mental reputation with all this nonsense going on off the field for the last couple of years. But when he was on, like, he was just the ultimate competitor. Like he was constantly owning his craft. Like he got to a point with Ben where like there were certain routes where no one could cover it, and it was just because he had worked with Ben on that for so long that like if they ran that route, it was gonna be open.
It reminded me, for a whole different reason, of Brady and Edelman.
Yeah.
Those option routes with Brady and Edelman, they were just on the same page. Now, Edelman, nowhere near as athletically gifted as AB, but there was something about, like, the hole in the zone, Edelman found it. Yep. It is what it is. And I think the Ben to Antonio Brown ones that I can think of, it was always, like, the over-the-shoulder catches on kind of, like, the fade routes. You can't do anything about it. Yeah. It's not possible. The best. That was my messenger, by the way. The best throws just always beat the best defenses. It just is what it is. That's one of the things where, like, so we play flag football poorly, right? And it's like, if the NFL's here, we're in the ground about, we're probably to China, right, in terms of level. But one of the things we notice when we're playing is the absolute concentration it takes to, like, run your route, get open, and then especially do the catch, like finish it off. Sometimes I'll make a catch, and I'll look down at my feet, and I'm like, I'm 4 feet out of bounds, right? And you look at these guys that do it, that can control their body so much that they know exactly where their toes are, exactly where that ball is. It's unbelievable. It's hard to imagine because, like I said, and again, we're down to China. They're up in the heavens, but like still, like even like me thinking, like if I'm thinking, where's my feet? Then I'm gonna drop the ball. If I'm thinking, where's the ball? I'm gonna forget my feet. It's the mental acuity it takes for that 5 seconds that the play is going. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable. So there was a time where I actually disagreed with Brian, where I would always be like top wide, because I would always be like, what's the most important position? And it's like quarterback, of course. What's next? And Brian, sometimes I don't know if you would say specifically. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like top wide receiver, I would take the top wide receiver next. And I was always like, it's not that important. I'd want like a really boss running back. But like now I get it. Like it's having that guy is just. And, of course, with the running back, you have the O-line and all that stuff involved. And, there's all those pieces and all that. But having that top wide receiver that can just beat his guy no matter what is just so key. And it's unlike anything else. Which is why I want Brown to go back to the Bucs, because let's have some fun this year. You know what I mean? Let's have some fun.
Yeah, with him as the third receiver, there's no nickel corner in the league who's going to be able to cover him. So, yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing that it stinks for is taking... I guess anyone but Mike Evans in a fantasy.
Yeah.
You had Mike Evans. No.
Mike Evans was pretty good for me. Yeah.
Last year, right?
Yep.
He was one of those guys that would have 2 catches, 2 touchdowns. I remember one game, at least maybe in the first half, he had 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, 2 yards.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's, 14.2 points. Yeah. So, hey, whatever, It's the same as having an Edelman having 7 catches, 70 yards kind of thing. But... fantasy, I miss fantasy.
I do too.
I used to play NBA fantasy with Mush, but like, damn, I know nothing. I would just put the person who had like the, highest points for whatever, and you set it for the week.
Yep.
And sometimes Mush would be like, "Do you know your one guy?" I think my one guy like retired. like midway through the season, he was like, "Oh, I have this heart defect or whatever, so I retire." And they're like, "Do you know your one guy retired?"
Oh no!
And I was like, oh yeah.
I played fantasy baseball 1 year, won the whole league, and I've never played since.
Retire on top.
I don't know a darn thing about about baseball. Yeah.
I do remember that when I auto drafted in NBA, because why the hell am I going to sit there?
Yeah.
And my last pick, it drafted Meta World Peace, and he'd been retired for 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I kept him on the team the entire year at the bench. I was like, hey man, maybe
he comes back.
He's gonna make a comeback,
basketball. So.
And I think I called my team Meta World something. We just miss fantasy, It's like football season and fantasy is just like it's like this whirlwind that comes in and then it's just gone, and you're like, what happened?
It occupies so much of your life, and then it's just gone. You're just sitting there with that void, like Well,
when football season comes around, I do have like a lot more going on. Watching it, of course, I do the NFL pick'ems and stuff like that. Those pick'ems take me like 2 to 3 hours every week.
I always wondered how long you spent on those because you spent a lot. They're long posts.
yeah. Well, we generally have about 40-45 people. I'll actually, because I think we're probably wrapping up here soon. I'll go over how I do them, just in case anyone's watching and cares about that. But I feel like I'll at least explain it to one other human being. So early on in the week, I'll post the results and I'll be like, please get your posts in. And then some people will make their picks and some people won't. And then on like Wednesday, I'll just write down all the names and then I'll cross off the ones, or I guess I do it on the computer. I delete the ones that already have it in. So then I have the 10 people that it's always the same 5 or 10 people that don't get them in because they think they're friggin' Nostradamus and well, if I wait till the injury reports, that'll make all the difference for this. Like, yeah, unless it's like the quarterback, it rarely makes it. Anyway,
yeah.
So then I'll message them, or I'll put it on there. Hey, get your damn picks in, get your damn picks in. Then some people do only Thursday night, so I'm like, I hate you. So then on like Sunday morning, I have to be like, hi, can you please get your picks in? Once I finally get all the picks. On Monday, because normally there's a Monday night game, I'll go through, I just copy and paste all the people's names and whatever. I go next to it, I write down X wrong. So say if you got 4 wrong, and then the Pats and the Bucks played, and you pick the Bucks. I go through, I kind of like memorize it, because sometimes I honestly, like for the crappy games, like Bengals versus Browns, I'll be like, okay, Browns, and I'll read it like Pats, Steelers, Bengals, Browns, and as I get one of them, like someone gets them wrong, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. You get 4 wrong, and you pick the Bucks. 4 wrong Bucks. Then the next day, in the morning, I can just go through Bucks 1, 12-4 kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think the first part takes me about an hour and a half, and then the second part takes me about an hour to put everything all through. So it's like, and I do that 17 times, so... I love the playoffs when it's like 4 things. And
yeah, because that's not nearly as much. Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm gonna keep doing it because I feel like when I stop doing it, it'll be like people will be like, "Oh, I missed that. Where's the picks?" Then it'll be all the people that like don't get the picks in. Yeah. Oh, and I'll like secretly like every year I'll like shadow ban one person, and it's always a different person who I'll be like, "Hey, please get your picks in." And like sometimes like. It's a 17-week season. Sometimes people forget, and I get it. Like, if it's like week 13 and someone forgets, I'm just like, I'll just count it as average. Like, whatever the average is. If everyone goes 11-5, I'm like, you want 11-5. Because why am I going to kick someone out for 1 week? But, like, there's the people who are like, yo, I'm so stoked to do it. And then I'll, like, message them personally and be like, please get your picks in. And, like, week 2 they miss, and I'm like, delete line. Because it's just like, I'm not gonna come to you for 16 weeks and be like, please, sir, yeah. NFL picks.
Yeah, put in the picks for this thing that I'm doing totally for free and for fun. Yeah.
Totally for free and for fun.
Yeah.
And hopefully at least people get some enjoyment out of it. So do you have anything that you want to add to what we've been through? I don't know how much time we've gone through, but...
I mean, I think we covered it for the most part. The draft is next week, and as I was saying, should be a fun first round. I know for a lot of people, especially if you're a fan of a good team, you don't like to sit there through the first 10 picks and wait for stuff that you don't care about. But I think the first 10 picks are gonna be fun this year. So I would say tune in, try to watch the whole thing.
I can't say that I've stayed awake for the end of the first round, even though the Pats were always picking late. For the past like 3 or 4 years, it goes really late.
It does.
It really goes does. like. Have you ever been to the West Coast for like more than a couple days, like just visiting or what? Dude, West Coast time is best Coast time. I love the East Coast, but when you're out there, it's amazing. Like NFL football at 10 a.m. is incredible. You know,
I would love that.
Sunday night starts at 5:30. So like Sunday night football, I have to nowadays because we're both. You're not 30 yet, are you?
I'll be 30 this year.
Rough life.
Yeah.
When you get to that certain age, the Sunday night football is hard to get through. Even if it's a good game, sometimes I'll wake up, I'll be like, oh, it's the third quarter, you know what I mean? Being on the West Coast, it's done by 8:30, you know? So now that you're done, you can like pop on SportsCenter afterwards, talk about it, get food. Yeah, it really is.
We all gonna move out to the West Coast. Got it.
I'm just for, I like the East Coast a lot, but for the West Coast, for the time frame, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like the I didn't watch a single second of NCAA tournament, but I did notice that at 11 p.m. On the day of the national championship, the second half didn't start yet. And I was like, I messaged my one friend who's a big gambler, and I was like, are you serious? And he was like, well, it's just kind of like an event or whatever. It's like, yeah, an event for the West Coast. Yeah. Like, it's like 11 p.m. and it's not ending. It's like the second half is like, all right, we're getting back to it. It's like, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
I got things to do tomorrow, man.
Yeah. Well, not even that. Even if I want to sleep in, it's like, what am I going to stay up till 12:30 watching? That's why the Super Bowl is amazing, being at like 6:30. It gives you kind of an idea, because at the end of it, you can digest whatever, you know. Whereas on Sunday and Monday Night Football, dude, I'm like, sometimes even when the Pats played really crappy teams, I would like be like, 37-0 Pats over Jets. Oh, cool.
Yeah, those games where your team on the East Coast is playing on the West Coast, where the game starts at like 9, 10 sometimes. I'm just like,
yeah. Same deal with baseball. When I followed baseball a lot, when like the Braves would go out to San Francisco, I'd be like, 10 p.m. starting. By the way, that is one very, very, very last thing. I'm very excited that Monday Night Football can now officially flex games in. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the full rules are with it and everything, but I don't know if this is true or not. But Mush always says, and he always says in the group chat that NFL hates ESPN because of some reality show they came out with years ago that showed the NFL as being a bunch of guys doing steroids and stuff. I don't know what the show's called, but it was some show that ran for one season in the early 2000s. And it didn't make sense, but then when you see the Monday Night Football schedule, it does make sense. Dude, those are not, Monday Night Football when it was on ABC was, the game.
Yeah.
Right? It was what the Sunday Night Football is nowadays.
Yeah.
But Monday Night Football is okay, we'll get you the Pats, but they're going to be against the Jets. You know what I mean? It was never, the big
never
one.
A big
so
game. Yeah.
I'm really excited. I feel like that'll give more... Thursday night was getting better games than Monday night. You know, sometimes. Yeah, I'm very appreciative of Thursday Night Football existing, but also sometimes I'd be like, give these boys a little more time to rest.
Yeah, there were so many games I watched on Thursday nights where it's just God, this is ugly. So. But NFL's not going to get rid of it anytime soon.
No, especially with Amazon and all that kind of stuff.
Not at all.
So, well, Brian, thank you very much. I wish the best to your Patriots this year. And also, I guess, the Carolina Panthers.
Yep.
Who do you... Now, I guess it's so... we always pick who to pick the NFC... who's going to win the NFC South, but I guess it's...
Well, it'll be the Bucs.
It'll be the Bucs,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, it's not really...
What place will the Panthers come in?
Third,
maybe. Saints second?
Yeah.
Falcons fourth?
Falcons fourth. That could be interchangeable because it really depends on... if the Saints decide to go forward with... If the Saints quit on Jameis Winston and decide to go with Taysom Hill, I feel like it's going to get ugly.
Brian, how much does Taysom Hill get paid this year?
I think his cap hit is $18 million.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, at least he's like a full-time quarterback, right, or something? They love that dude.
I hate him.
Taysom Hill has pictures of Sean Payton at the office Christmas party or something like that he's holding over his head or something.
They're just oh yeah, we're gonna pay $18 million to this guy who plays 15% of the offensive snaps.
Do you remember sometimes my question of the week for would be how many touches will Taysom Hill get? And oftentimes it's you think this dude gets the ball all the time, but it would be 2 times. Yeah. I would set it at 2.5 over under, and everyone was under. I'm like, man, I should have set it at 1.5. You know,
he touched the ball twice and scored once. Yeah,
dude, I swear I had to shut off my TV twice last year because I was watching Saints games, and Taysom Hill was back there at quarterback, and he scored a touchdown from 10 yards out. And, he gets the ball, and then he does that college thing where you just get the ball and you just start running right away. Yeah. And he would score! I understand he's a big guy, but lots of people in the NFL are big guys. So, I remember one time I was like, it was a 4 p.m. game. I was like, that's enough football for me.
Well, yeah, because then you got to hear him talk about Taysom Hill for the next 20 minutes because he scored a rushing touchdown. So yeah.
Why can't you stop it? He's not going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
It's like the Wildcats screwed with the Patriots for 1 week in 2008. But then it didn't because people knew it existed. Taysom Hill has ball. He gone run.
Yeah.
And for some reason, you're like, all the linebackers are like, you gotta get away. Whatever. It's actually good in the long run because the Saints didn't win the Super Bowl. The Bucs did, by the way. And they paid him $18 million to do those meme runs. So that's a good thing. So
I love it.
All right. Well, thank you again, Brian. We really appreciate it. This is our 4th official year of doing this, and we'll be back for at least one more, probably, maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Go Pats, go Bucks, go Panthers, I suppose.